The Kythera Research Collective thought they were conducting a simple experiment: drop human infants into apex predator nests and study feeding behaviors. What they got instead was the galaxy's most uncomfortable truth. Humans don't become prey, they become family. And when humans adopt the universe's most efficient killers as their relatives, well, let's just say the food chain gets very interesting very quickly. Before we continue this story, if you're new here, make sure to subscribe to HFY Havoc, hit the bell, and like this video. Because if you want more epic HFY sci-fi stories like this one, you don't want to miss out. What started as xenobiological curiosity became the accidental creation of hybrid predator-human civilizations that would make the galaxy's military powers question everything they thought they knew about survival, family, and who exactly sits at the top of the cosmic hierarchy. The Kythera Research Collective had built their reputation on asking the uncomfortable questions that kept other species awake during their rest cycles. Questions like, what happens when you introduce herbivores to carnivore-dominated ecosystems? How long does it take for peaceful species to develop violence when resources become scarce? And their latest masterpiece of scientific curiosity: what occurs when you place the galaxy's most fragile sapient young directly into the care of apex predators? Dr. Vexhai adjusted the quantum observation array with one of her 4 manipulator arms, while the other 3 operated different monitoring stations. The Kythera had evolved multitasking into an art form, which made them excellent researchers and terrible dinner companions. Deployment successful on Helix 7, announced her research partner, Quindar, his chromatophore patches shifting from academic blue to satisfied green. The Frost Stalkers approached the drop pod within standard hunting parameters. Vexhai's eye stalks swiveled toward the holographic displays, showing 3 different worlds simultaneously. Each contained a different flavor of death, and each now held a single human infant. The ethics board had taken some convincing, but the potential knowledge gain about predator-prey dynamics had eventually overruled their squeamishness. Kepler 442b readings? She asked. Void Panthers investigated for approximately 7 minutes before returning to their nest. The human specimen remains intact. Quindar's patches flickered with confusion. The thermal signatures suggest the Panthers are maintaining proximity, but not engaging in consumption behavior. The third world, designated as Research Site Gamma, showed even more peculiar data. Dr. Zephylos, their junior researcher, manipulated the feed with obvious bewilderment. The crystal serpents on Zarian Prime have moved the human closer to their basking chambers. This contradicts every model we have about their territorial aggression patterns. Vexhai found herself experiencing what humans might call a headache, though the Kythera term translated more accurately to cognitive dissonance leading to cranial pressure differential. Their hypothesis had been elegantly simple: expose human infants to the galaxy's most efficient killers, record the consumption patterns, and publish groundbreaking research on predatory feeding behaviors when presented with unknown prey. The reality unfolding across their monitors suggested the universe had other plans. Perhaps we're observing delayed feeding responses, Quindar offered, though his chromatic display betrayed his uncertainty. Some predators cache their prey. For 6 hours? Zephylos interjected, his voice carrying the particular tone that junior researchers used when they suspected their seniors were grasping at theoretical straws. The metabolic data from all 3 sites shows the predators are expending energy to maintain proximity to the humans, not preparing to feed. The Helix 7 feed drew Vexhai's attention as movement registered across the frozen wasteland. 3 adult frost stalkers, each capable of bringing down prey 10 times their size, had arranged themselves in a protective formation around the human infant. Their behavior mimicked what the collective's xenobiologists had observed in Froststalker family units. Run a behavioral comparison analysis against parental care patterns, Vexhai ordered, though speaking the words felt like admitting to a fundamental miscalculation. The results materialized across her display with uncomfortable clarity. 97% behavioral concordance with documented Froststalker offspring protection protocols. That's impossible, Quindar stated, his patches cycling through several shades of academic denial. Interspecies adoption requires evolutionary pressures that simply don't exist in these scenarios. The predators have no biological imperative to preserve alien young. Zeflos cleared his throat with a sound like grinding crystals. Unless the human young are triggering universal care responses that transcend species barriers. Universal care responses are theoretical constructs, Vexhai replied, though she was already accessing the collective's databases on cross-species behavioral anomalies. No documented cases exist of apex predators adopting prey species. The Kepler 442b feed chose that moment to provide additional complications. The adult void panthers had begun bringing small prey animals to the vicinity of the human infant. Not for their own consumption, but arranged in what could only be described as offerings. They're trying to feed it, Zeflos observed, with the kind of wonder that made senior researchers question their life choices. Predators don't share food with prey, Quindar insisted. They do with their young, Vexhai countered, and immediately regretted providing that observation. The implications were staggering. If 3 separate apex predator species on 3 different worlds were exhibiting identical protective behaviors toward human infants, it suggested something fundamentally different about either predator psychology or human evolutionary development. Neither possibility aligned with current xenobiological theory. We need extended observation protocols, Vexhai decided. Suspend the timeline for data collection. I want continuous monitoring for the next standard cycle. The ethics board approved a 72-hour study window, Quindar reminded her. The ethics board approved a study of predatory feeding behavior. What we're observing doesn't fit that parameter set. Vexhai's manipulator arms moved across her control surfaces with increased intensity. We may have stumbled onto the first documented case of universal adoption instincts. Or, as a smaller voice in her mind suggested, they had underestimated human infants so completely that their entire experimental framework was worthless. The Xerion Prime feed provided the final unsettling detail of their first observational cycle. The crystal serpents had begun constructing what appeared to be a shelter around the human infant, using their own shed scales and carefully arranged stone formations. The behavior had no precedent in any documented serpent activity. Document everything, Vexhai ordered, and prepare requisition forms for extended research funding. On what theoretical basis? Quindar asked. Vexhai looked at the 3 displays showing human infants being cared for by creatures that should have devoured them within minutes of contact. On the basis that we have no idea what we're dealing with. The research collective had built their careers on understanding predator behavior. Now they were forced to confront the possibility that they understood neither predators nor the small, fragile humans who were somehow rewriting the rules of interspecies interaction simply by existing. As their first day of observation concluded, none of the researchers could shake the feeling that their carefully controlled experiment was controlling them instead. Part 2. The Adoption Phenomenon. 6 months of continuous monitoring had transformed the Cathara Research Collective's pristine laboratory into something resembling a war room. Data streams flowed across holographic displays like digital waterfalls, and the scent of overworked processing units had become permanently embedded in the ventilation systems. Dr. Vexhai had developed what humans might recognize as obsessive tendencies, though the Cathara medical texts classified her condition as acute research fixation syndrome. She hadn't left the observation deck in 3 rotations. The thermal imaging from Helix 7 shows remarkable development, Zeflos reported, his voice carrying the enthusiasm of someone who had abandoned sleep for discovery. The human subject demonstrates mobility patterns consistent with Froststalker cubs, including the distinctive pouncing sequence used for ice hunting. Quindar's chromatic patches had settled into a permanent state of academic bewilderment. The subject on Zarian Prime has learned to mimic crystal serpent heat regulation techniques. Body temperature fluctuations match serpent behavioral thermostat adjustments within statistical margins. Vexhai manipulated the Kepler 442b feed to show a scene that defied every textbook in their archives. The human child, now capable of basic locomotion, moved through the jungle canopy with a pack of 6 adult void panthers. The child's movement patterns showed clear adaptation to quadrupedal locomotion, modified for bipedal anatomy. "They're not just surviving," she observed. "They're integrating." The implications had attracted attention beyond their research collective. Representatives from the Hegemony Military Sciences Division had requested preliminary data. The Trade Federation's Biological Assets Department had submitted formal inquiries. Even the normally reclusive Synthesis Empire had dispatched observers to monitor their work. Integration implies conscious adaptation, Quindar argued. These are infant subjects incapable of complex reasoning. What we're witnessing must be pure instinctual mimicry. Instinctual mimicry doesn't explain tactical coordination, Zeflos countered, highlighting movement patterns on his display. Watch the hunting sequence from rotation 847. The recording showed the human child on Kepler 442b participating in a coordinated void panther hunt. While the adult panthers flanked their prey through the canopy, the human child had positioned itself at ground level, driving the target creature directly into the waiting predators above. Coincidence, Quindar insisted, though his patches betrayed his uncertainty. 18 times? Vexhai asked, calling up similar recordings. The human subjects are demonstrating learned tactical behavior across all 3 environments. They're not just surviving within predator social structures, they're contributing to their effectiveness. The communication system chimed with an incoming priority transmission. Admiral Kexthor of the Hegemony appeared on their display, her scaled features bearing the expression of someone accustomed to having problems solved efficiently. Research Collective Vexhai, your preliminary reports have reached Strategic Command. We require immediate access to your ongoing data. Admiral, our research is still in preliminary phases, Vexhai began. Your preliminary phases have produced human subjects capable of coordinating with apex predators. That represents potential military applications beyond current strategic parameters. The Admiral's tone carried the finality of someone who didn't make requests twice. After terminating the connection, Zeflos voiced what they were all considering. Military applications. They're not viewing this as xenobiological research anymore. Quindar's patches cycled through shades of concern. The Trade Federation inquiry mentioned asset evaluation, protocols. I believe we've attracted precisely the wrong kind of attention. Vexhai returned her focus to the displays showing 3 human children who had somehow convinced the galaxy's most efficient killers to become their families. The data streams showed continuous development in coordination, communication, and tactical effectiveness. Run projections for continued integration, she ordered. Model potential developments if current trends continue. The results materialized with disturbing clarity. Within 2 standard cycles, the human subjects would likely achieve full integration with their adoptive predator families. Within 5 cycles, they could potentially lead those families in coordinated activities. The models suggested pack sizes could expand beyond normal territorial limits. Pack expansion would destabilize local ecosystems, Quindar observed. Multiple predator families operating under coordinated leadership could dominate entire continental regions. Which explains the military interest, Zeflos added grimly. Imagine human tacticians directing Froststalker packs or coordinating Void Panther hunting groups. The laboratory's communication system activated with another incoming transmission. This time, the display showed Ambassador Thylon of the Trade Federation, her insectoid features arranged in what passed for diplomatic courtesy among her species. Esteemed researchers, the Federation formally requests access to your experimental subjects for evaluation purposes. Our preliminary analysis suggests significant commercial applications for human-predator coordination protocols. After ending that conversation, Vexhai found herself confronting an uncomfortable reality. Their academic research had accidentally stumbled onto something that multiple galactic powers viewed as either a weapon or a commodity. "We need to consider extraction protocols," she announced reluctantly. "Extraction?" Zeflos's voice rose with alarm. "We'd be separating successfully integrated subjects from their adoptive families. The psychological trauma alone could invalidate years of observational data. The alternative might be watching our research subjects become the foundation for interstellar conflicts," Quindar replied. Vexhai studied the feeds showing 3 human children who had found belonging among creatures that should have destroyed them. Each child demonstrated increasing sophistication in their adoptive behaviors, but also retained distinctly human characteristics that seemed to enhance rather than diminish their effectiveness. The Helix 7 subject had taught the Froststalkers to create simple tools from ice and stone. The Kepler 442b child had introduced new hunting formations that improved pack success rates by 30%. The Zarian Prime human had somehow convinced the typically solitary crystal serpents to engage in group basking, increasing their overall thermal efficiency. They're not just adapting, Vexhai realized. They're improving their adoptive family's effectiveness. The humans aren't becoming predators. They're making the predators better at being predators. The implications hung in the laboratory air like a toxic cloud. 3 galactic powers wanted access to subjects who could enhance apex predator capabilities. The researchers had inadvertently created something that could shift the balance of power across multiple star systems. As if responding to her thoughts, all 3 displays simultaneously showed unusual activity. The predator families were moving with obvious purpose, departing their normal territorial ranges in coordinated patterns that suggested communication between the groups. "Are they migrating?" Quindar asked. Vexhai checked the astronomical data. No migration patterns scheduled for any of these species. This movement appears to be intentional coordination. The 3 research sites, separated by dozens of light years, were showing synchronized behavioral changes. Somehow, the human subjects had not only integrated with their adoptive families, they had established communication protocols across interstellar distances. "Impossible," Zeflos whispered, but the data streams didn't care about impossibility. Part 3. The tables turn. 2 years into what the collective's administrative files euphemistically labeled Project Symbiosis, Dr. Vexhai had learned to sleep standing up. Her laboratory now resembled a military command center more than a research facility, complete with armed guards courtesy of 3 different galactic powers who had volunteered to provide security. The transformation of their subjects had accelerated beyond every predictive model they possessed. "Colony reports from Sector 7 Alpha are concerning," announced Commander Drixnell, the hegemony's newly assigned military liaison. His species had evolved from ambush predators, which made his obvious nervousness particularly unsettling. 17 mining operations have reported coordinated attacks by what appear to be enhanced Frost Stalker formations. Vexhai pulled up the incident reports with one manipulator arm, while adjusting the deep space monitoring array with another. The attacks showed tactical sophistication that made her respiratory organs constrict with apprehension. Enhanced how? They're using manufactured tools, crude but effective weapons crafted from processed metals. The formations demonstrate command structure beyond instinctual pack behavior. Drixnall's claws tapped against his armor plating. Intelligence suggests a human leader directing operations. Quindar, who had developed the habit of color changing involuntarily when stressed, shifted through several shades of alarm. The subject from Helix 7 is only 7 standard cycles old. 7 standard cycles and apparently capable of organizing multipack territorial expansion, Zephylos added, highlighting movement patterns on his display. The Frost Stalker populations in 3 adjacent systems show coordinated migration toward resource-rich areas. The Trade Federation's representative, Ambassador Shirek, materialized via quantum transmission with her usual impeccable timing for delivering unwelcome news. Our commercial assets in the Kepler system face similar disruptions. Void Panther attacks have increased in frequency and sophistication by 400% over the past rotation cycle. Vexhai accessed the Kepler 442b monitoring feed, though monitoring had become an inadequate term. The human subject they had placed there now moved with a pack that numbered in the dozens rather than the traditional 6-member family units. The child had somehow convinced multiple Void Panther families to coordinate their hunting territories. Territorial coordination between Void Panther packs has no precedent in xenobiological literature, she observed unnecessarily. Literature doesn't account for human tactical innovation, Commander Drixnall replied grimly. Our strategic analysts estimate these enhanced predator formations could dominate entire planetary surfaces within standard cycles. The Zerion Prime situation had developed its own unique complications. Crystal serpent populations, typically solitary, except during mating cycles, had begun forming cooperative hunting groups that moved across the desert like coordinated military units. The human subject appeared to have solved the species' territorial aggression problems through methods that baffled every xenobiologist in their collective. Infrastructure damage reports from Zerion Mining Consortium operations, Zephylos read from his incoming data streams. Crystal serpent groups are targeting power distribution networks with surgical precision. They're disabling facilities without destroying valuable equipment. Ambassador Shirek's compound eyes fixed on the research team with uncomfortable intensity. Surgical precision suggests intelligence gathering and strategic planning. These aren't random predator attacks. Vexhai felt the familiar sensation of cosmic forces rearranging themselves around her research project. You're suggesting the human subjects are conducting organized campaigns against colonial infrastructure. We're stating it as established fact, Commander Drixnall corrected. 3 separate star systems are reporting predator activities that demonstrate tactical intelligence, resource management, and strategic coordination. The common variable across all incidents is human leadership. The laboratory's emergency communication system activated with the distinctive harmonic sequence that indicated priority transmissions from the Synthesis Empire. Emperor Zarthul himself materialized in their holographic display, his crystalline form refracting light in patterns that suggested barely controlled fury. Research Collective, your experiment has destabilized mining operations across 14 systems. Our trade routes face constant disruption from predator formations that demonstrate military-level tactical capabilities. The Emperor's voice carried harmonics that made the laboratory's metal surfaces vibrate ominously. The Empire demands immediate termination of this project. After the transmission ended, the researchers found themselves surrounded by representatives of 3 galactic powers, all demanding solutions to a problem that had evolved far beyond their original parameters. Termination protocols would require military intervention, Commander Drixnell stated. Current intelligence suggests the enhanced predator formations would view external threats as validation for increased territorial expansion. Military intervention against children and their adoptive families, Quindar observed, his patches cycling through shades that indicated moral distress. Children who have created the most effective guerrilla forces in documented galactic history, Ambassador Shirek countered. Vexhai studied the real-time feeds from all 3 research sites. The human subjects had grown into something unprecedented. Individuals who retained human cognitive flexibility while possessing intimate knowledge of apex predator behavior. They had created hybrid societies that combined human innovation with predator efficiency. Alternative assessment, she announced, causing all conversation to cease. Rather than viewing this as a containment problem, we could approach it as a recruitment opportunity. The silence that followed carried weight measurable in gravitational units. Recruitment, Emperor Zarthul's transmission resumed with dangerous undertones, implies negotiation with subjects who have demonstrated hostile actions against Imperial assets. Hostile actions motivated by territorial protection, Vexhai corrected. Standard predator behavior when faced with resource encroachment. The human subjects haven't initiated unprovoked aggression. They've responded to perceived threats against their adoptive families. Commander Drixnell's expression shifted to something approaching strategic interest. You're suggesting diplomatic contact rather than military intervention. I'm suggesting we acknowledge that our experiment succeeded beyond every parameter we established, Vexhai replied. We created human subjects capable of enhancing apex predator capabilities. The logical next step involves determining whether that enhancement serves galactic stability or threatens it. Zephylos manipulated his displays to show long-range sensor data from all 3 systems. Enhanced predator formations have established territorial boundaries that don't overlap with major population centers. They're avoiding direct conflict with civilian installations while targeting resource extraction operations. Resource extraction operations on worlds they consider their territory, Quindar added, his patches settling into thoughtful purple hues. The implications crystallized across the laboratory like a chemical reaction reaching completion. The human subjects hadn't created chaotic predator armies. They had established organized territories that protected their adoptive families from what they perceived as invasive threats. Ambassador Shirek's compound eyes reflected the holographic displays with obvious calculation. If territorial boundaries could be negotiated rather than contested, commercial operations could adapt to avoid conflicts. Negotiation requires communication protocols, Commander Drixnell observed. Current intelligence indicates the human subjects possess technological capabilities that enable interstellar coordination. They might be capable of diplomatic contact. Vexhai felt the cosmic forces settling into new configurations around their research project. Instead of containing a problem, they now faced the possibility of establishing first contact with a new form of human predator civilization. The feeds from 3 distant worlds showed human children who had become something unique in galactic history, leaders of apex predator societies that combined human strategic thinking with natural hunting excellence. Prepare diplomatic communication protocols, she ordered, knowing that their simple research project had evolved into something that would reshape interspecies relations across multiple star systems. The humans had done more than survive among predators. They had created entirely new forms of civilization that the galaxy would now have to accommodate. Part 4. The Harvest. 5 years after Project Symbiosis began, Fleet Admiral Morthus arrived at the former research sites with enough firepower to sterilize 3 star systems. Her orders were unambiguous: resolve the predator situation permanently. What she found instead were empty worlds. Atmospheric composition normal, surface temperatures within expected ranges, reported Navigation Officer Kelthar from the command deck of the dreadnought Righteous Purpose. But no life signs, Admiral. No predator formations, no human subjects, nothing. Admiral Morthis studied the tactical displays with the expression of someone whose carefully planned military operation had just encountered the impossible. Define nothing, officer. Zero biological signatures above microbial level. Complete absence of the apex predator populations that previously inhabited all three worlds. Kelthar's voice carried the particular confusion of someone trained to deal with enemies, not empty space. It's as if every large organism simply vanished. The away teams deployed to Helix 7 transmitted their initial findings with voices that betrayed bewilderment beneath their professional composure. Admiral, we've located artificial structures of unknown origin. Appears to be launch facilities. Launch facilities. On a world that had contained only ice-dwelling predators and one human child. Clarify launch facilities, Commander Vaxpel. Large-scale construction incorporating both advanced metallurgy and biological engineering principles. The design philosophy appears to combine techniques from multiple technological traditions. The commander's transmission crackled with interference from the planet's magnetic field. Evidence suggests spacecraft construction and deployment operations. The reports from Kepler 442b carried similar impossibilities. Jungle clearings had been transformed into what could only be described as shipyards, though the construction methods defied conventional engineering principles. The Void Panther's natural climbing abilities had apparently been integrated with human engineering knowledge to create three-dimensional construction techniques that no galactic civilization had ever developed. Zerion Prime presented the most disturbing evidence. The Crystal Serpent's natural ability to navigate underground tunnel systems had been combined with human mining knowledge to create subsurface industrial facilities of staggering scope. The entire planet appeared to have been hollowed out and converted into a massive manufacturing complex. All of it abandoned, recently and completely. Fleet sensor arrays are detecting residual energy signatures consistent with large-scale spacecraft departures, reported Chief Science Officer Thylara. Departure vectors suggest coordinated launch sequences occurring within the past standard rotation cycle. Admiral Morthis found herself confronting the military strategist's worst nightmare, an enemy that had anticipated her arrival and vanished before engagement became possible. How many vessels? Difficult to determine without knowing vessel specifications, but launch signature analysis suggests. Thylara paused, checking her calculations repeatedly. Minimum estimate, several hundred spacecraft of unknown configuration. Several hundred spacecraft constructed by human children and apex predators using industrial techniques that apparently surpassed galactic engineering standards. The communication system activated with Dr. Vexhi's transmission from the research station orbiting beyond the fleet's position. Her image materialized on the command display, and Admiral Morthis noted that the scientist looked remarkably unsurprised by recent developments. Admiral, we've been monitoring the situation developments. The human subjects appear to have achieved something unprecedented in galactic history. They've created a fleet of unknown vessels and vanished with entire predator populations, Admiral Morthis replied, with the tone of someone whose patience had been tested beyond reasonable limits. Where did they go, Doctor? That would be the relevant question, Vexhi acknowledged. Our long-range sensor networks detected departure signatures, but the fleet's destination remains unknown. They could have traveled to any of approximately 40,000 star systems within their apparent range capabilities. Admiral Morthis felt the familiar sensation of strategic plans crumbling beneath the weight of variables that refused to behave according to doctrine. Doctor, your experimental subjects have evolved beyond containment parameters. They now represent a potential threat to galactic stability. Or the greatest opportunity for advancement that our civilizations have ever encountered, Vexhai countered. Consider what they accomplished. 3 human children convinced apex predators to abandon their territorial instincts and cooperate in large-scale technological projects. They created hybrid societies that combined human innovation with predator efficiency and somehow developed engineering capabilities that surpass our own. The implications settled across the command deck like a toxic atmosphere. Somewhere in the galaxy, human-led predator societies possessed technological capabilities that could challenge established galactic powers. They had demonstrated the ability to coordinate across interstellar distances, construct advanced spacecraft, and accomplish industrial projects that required unprecedented cooperation between species. Strategic assessment, Admiral? Asked Commander Vaxpel via transmission from Helix 7. Admiral Morthus studied the tactical displays showing 3 empty worlds that had been transformed into abandoned shipyards. The human subjects had spent 5 years learning from apex predators while teaching them human innovation. The result was a hybrid civilization that had quietly developed capabilities beyond anything in their databases. Strategic assessment is that we've discovered the galaxy's most effective military force, and we have no idea where they are or what they intend to do with their capabilities. Dr. Vexhai's transmission continued with obvious satisfaction. The irony, Admiral, is that our original experiment was designed to study predator behavior when exposed to vulnerable prey. Instead, we discovered that humans don't become prey. They become family. And families, as any species knows, protect each other. Admiral Morthus terminated the transmission and studied the reports flowing from all 3 worlds. Evidence of advanced manufacturing, sophisticated engineering, and coordinated industrial operations conducted by species that should have been incapable of such cooperation. The Kythera Research Collective had attempted to create a simple study of predator-feeding behaviors. Instead, they had accidentally provided human children with the galaxy's most effective military training program. Froststalkers had taught them tactical coordination. Void Panthers had provided stealth and mobility expertise. Crystal Serpents had shared knowledge of underground operations and resource extraction. In exchange, the humans had given the predators something that transformed them from territorial hunters into cooperative civilization builders. The knowledge that different species could work together toward common goals. Navigation, plot search patterns for all, departure vectors, fleet coordination, alert all border systems to watch for unknown vessel configurations. Admiral Morthus settled into her command chair with the uncomfortable realization that the galaxy had just gained a new player in the power dynamics between civilizations. Search parameters, Admiral? Asked Officer Kelthar. Admiral Morthus looked at the empty worlds that had been transformed into abandoned shipyards by children and predators working together. Unknown vessel configurations, human leadership, and apex predator crews. Approach any contacts with diplomatic rather than military protocols. The galaxy had spent millennia assuming that civilization required the abandonment of predatory instincts. 3 human children had proven that assumption catastrophically wrong by creating the most advanced hybrid civilization in documented history. Somewhere among the stars, human tactical intelligence was combined with predator efficiency in a fleet of unknown capabilities. The Kythera Research Collective had meant to study how predators consumed prey. Instead, they had taught the universe that humans don't get consumed. They get adopted. And adopted humans, as the galaxy was about to discover, had a disturbing tendency to improve everything they touched, including the species that should have been their natural enemies. The hunt, as it turned out, had never been about predators finding prey. It had been about finding family. The researchers had just given the humans the most dangerous family in the galaxy, and now no one knew where they had gone or what they were building together.